Welcome, listeners. Today we have a wonderful fireside chat between Dennis Fallon and Caitlyn Pollihan. We have two industry leaders today who are going to share insights and wonderful perspectives on industry trends and the future outlook. So, I am Nadia Jaja Pupa. I'm a podcast host of the Editor's Half Hour and CEO and co founder of Peak Publishing. I am also a contractor at the Utility Arborist Association. I work on the Utility Arborist Newsline. And in my history, my editorial background goes all the way back to an internship when I was in college at the University of Illinois at ISA. I used to work on Arborist News. It was such a wonderful early experience in the publishing industry. So I have a lot of history in this industry, not as an expert, but as an editor. And so today we are going to have a wonderful conversation. I'd like to introduce first Caitlyn Pollihan. She serves as CEO and Executive Director at the International Society of Arboriculture, ISA. During her tenure, Caitlyn has successfully led the organization's relocation to Atlanta, Georgia. So I was in Champaign. That was where the office was. So now it's in Atlanta, Georgia. She initiated the modernization of ISA's systems and operations and has increased the global connectivity and accessibility of the association. Amazing. Welcome, Caitlyn.
Thanks for having me.
And we have Dennis Fallon. He is the Utility Arborist Association Executive Director and a utility arborist. Prior to his current role, he was responsible for leading the vegetation management programs across several Midwest states on behalf of a large investor-owned utility. He's also been an adjunct professor at the at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, where he facilitated the Utility Vegetation Management Certificate Program. And that's a combined effort with the UAA and UVMA. So welcome, Dennis.
Thanks for having me today.
I'm so happy to have both of you here. We're going to have a wonderful conversation about several things. So we'll see how much we can fit into this time we have. But let's first talk about the history of both organizations. And let's reflect a little bit on the resources, the research, the information that both organizations have improved over the years. And there's been several changes, at least with ISA. I mean, physically, the headquarters, physically changed locations, but there's so much more to it. Let's start with you, Caitlyn. Let's talk about, what you've reflected on in the past couple years and changes and improvements that have happened with educational resources, really.
Yeah, you're right. There have been a lot of changes. One of the things that I think we all found out during COVID is that everything had to change in order to be able to do business at all, and to continue moving things forward during the stoppage, in essence, that we were all feeling at the time or experiencing at the time. But ISA had been putting things into motion many years before my arrival, even, to be looking at how we deliver education and information and consumer education information as well to the broadest audience possible. The move to Atlanta was one part of that overall process, but you're right, on our educational front, the way that we send publications out digitally, investments into our platform that we use for our journal of arboriculture and urban forestry, and ensuring that it's open access for people. You asked about history. We're getting ready to celebrate our 100th year, and I'm going to mention that several times during our conversation, I'm sure, because we're really excited about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. And part of the reason that we are celebrating such a milestone birthday or anniversary is because of the dedication and passion from our volunteers, our members, and our credential holders. And ISA has continued to listen to their feedback and try and provide resources and education and training in ways that are most accessible to them, both in the US as well as with our global partners.
That's awesome. And definitely something to celebrate 100 years. That's awesome. So yeah, we'll circle back to that for sure. I know we will. So Dennis, how about you? What are some ideas and of what you've kind of gleaned over the years with the UAA. I know the UAA, when I was an intern at ISA, that was like a small little department at ISA. And I remember helping a little bit. At the time, it was a newsletter. And now I've experienced the growth and I've seen how the newsletter has now turned into a full-blown magazine. So, yeah, the UAA has also gone through major changes. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your perspective?
Yeah, no, thanks. Absolutely. The UAA is not quite as like you mentioned. We started out as part of a group of arborists within the ISA that were looking to expand their knowledge and get more information around working around utility structures and utility infrastructure and the nuances associated with that. So in the mid 1970s, a group got together, and that group continued to grow and grow and grow. And we've, as you mentioned, the original Utility Arborist Newsline was a single sheet of paper that was stenographed and sent around intercompany mail and signed off by the person who got the next one. And over the years, the content and the quality of that program has gone out. It's a full-blown magazine. It's got its own ISSN numbers, which you were actively involved with helping us do, and trademarking the organization and putting those things together. And that magazine, again, is out there, is one piece, just a high quality part to get our information out to our members and get the outreach out there. And the organization continues to grow in its reach and trying to do that through both the magazine and through networking opportunities, getting the members together to chat and compare ideas and learn from each other and bring in experts to advance our growth.
And speaking of growth, I mean, obviously both organizations have gone through different things, but similar things. So how are both the ISA and UAA working together? I mean, are there programs or specific things or initiatives to educate the public about the importance of trees? Because I know that both organizations have similar mission statements, I should say, but their approach around trees is a little different. So I'd like to hear how both organizations are working together.
Yeah, so maybe I'll jump in here first, Dennis. I think during my tenure, one of the interesting things that I had learned is that there is potentially some, feeling out there that UAA and ISA are maybe not as close partners as Dennis and I and our strategic leaders think that we are. And so I do think that our organizations have many examples of the ways that we work together. And Dennis and I spend quite a bit of time offline, outside of the meetings that we happen to see each other at, talking about what UAA is working on, what ISA is working on, and how we can continue to amplify the work that each organization is doing individually, but in concert with each other. There are so many ways that we can provide information to the public. And if we're both speaking using similar language and talking about the same strategic priorities, but from different perspectives, it only allows us to have more impact on the audiences that we're trying to reach. And, our memberships are often joint members. So there are over 2,000 members of ISA that are also holding UAA memberships. And that doesn't even necessarily include the over 2,000 certification holders that are utility specialists. So that in itself is a large audience. But then when you look at the public who potentially have a interface or an interaction with either a vegetation manager, a utility arborist, somebody working in that nexus of trees and communities, that's a huge audience that Dennis and myself both want our organizations to be providing critical key information to. And some examples are the great PSAs that UAA does and ensuring that ISA is aware that they're coming out, so then we can send them out to a broader audience as well. And we're both able to use those messages to help inform our public. We also have written articles for the UAA publications and vice versa. We're credentialing partners on the utility specialist certification. So there's revenue that's shared, there's messaging that's shared, and it's a true partnership on that front. And all of those things directly impact our ability to message to the public about the importance of tree care, the importance of healthy trees and communities, the importance of understanding how trees in interaction with the corridors that are in their backyard, sometimes potentially what that means for them. And so, I think from my perspective, there are plenty of examples. I think the question is how are we going to continue to even have more of those moving forward? And that's something that we're in active conversation about.
It's a lot of stuff that goes on behind scenes too. So yeah, Dennis, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I would agree. And I think amplification is the correct word there. When you talk about that, where the two organizations work together, our memberships or our organizations as a whole are both predicated on advancing the professionalism of the industry and the industry of arboriculture itself. We're in different maybe spaces within that, but we're at the same time working on similar assets and similar trees out there. And our members are really, I want to say gifted or have the opportunity to work on some of society's most precious things. And that's our natural resources, right? Our nature and our environment. And they're working on living organisms out there. So they need to be professional. They need to understand the science behind that. And they need to have an opportunity to learn and grow in that space, making sure that the decisions they make, these organisms they're working on, a lot of them will and can have the capacity to be centurions in their communities. These trees will grow for hundreds of years in these communities. So it's incumbent on all of our members and everybody who touches a tree to make sure they do it correctly. And we're doing the right thing by that tree so we can steward that on into the future. And that's what our organizations do, is they allow that science to come together, the research to come together, along with the pragmatism of how to implement that into the field. How does that actually happen? How do you bring that skill set outside and work in the trees, keep each other safe, keep the forest healthy, keep the community healthy, and grow the whole piece? So the amplification, I think, is a really good word to use in here. And like Caitlyn says, we work together on a lot of things. And I'll let a little cat out of the bag. Maybe Caitlyn, she mentioned her 100th anniversary coming up here with ISA. And we've been working jointly on what that looks like for the UAA and the ISA to partner at the upcoming conference in 2024 in Atlanta to help each other and stand each other up in these organizations and help folks that don't necessarily understand how closely knit and how interdependent we are recognize that firsthand.
And you know what, Dennis, you said something the other day that really struck a chord with me. You're really good with analogies, and you had a really good analogy describing the industry as different facets on a gemstone or something. Do you remember when you said that? It was really, really cool. And you described how all different initiatives in the organization are like different facets. I'm butchering it. I should let you describe it. Do you remember you remember what you said though? It was really cool.
Yeah. So what I mentioned, the natural resource stewardship, right? That's what our memberships are really involved with. And that's what they do. And they're professionals in that space. And everybody's a specialist in one way or another. The group that I represent and work with most closely are specialists in working around our energy facilities and how to make sure that our society has its energy supply, whether it's gas for heating or it's electricity for our devices. The electricity we're using here as we talk on this recording, we're in 3 different communities across the country right now having this conversation. It requires energy to be powered. So, we're also dependent on other folks that are specialists in maybe defects and specialists in identifying risk and folks that are specialists in safety pieces. And each one of those is like a facet on a gemstone. It's not just one side. You can't have just one plane. You have to have all those pieces in order to make that stone shine. The piece you work the hardest and hone the most will be the biggest facet. And depending on your paradigm and your perspective, that's usually the area of your specialty. And then it grows out in things. And that's one of the things I think that Caitlyn and I work on often is try to talk about the community. I talk about the trees as, viable parts of that community. It also includes society and everything else. In a simplistic way, the difference between arboriculture and forestry is society. Forestry is managing for timber products, highly important. A lot of the principles used in forestry are also used in arboriculture and urban forestry. And that's why they're called those things. But the societal piece is the pivotal piece. And all these things fit together in order to make that community. And we need each other. And I think that's one of the messages going forward. You're going to hear more and more is the reality that as technology and information becomes more and more available, these independent silos become more and more Venn diagrams where there's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of things going on in those spaces. And we're going to have to rely on each other. And we have the opportunity to do that. The ability to communicate back and forth is getting easier and easier. And it's up to us to harness that power and take that forward.
I love it. I just love that analogy. Dennis always has these great analogies that I feel like they come out of nowhere. I'm like, whoa, that was really cool. Wasn't that? And so
hopefully I
okay.
don't get myself in trouble with one of those analogies. But
No. No, I love it. It's a great way to think visually too. It's cool. And so Caitlyn, earlier you were talking about so many interesting things about like building a network kind of and outreach. What is I guess I have like almost like a 2-3 part question really. What are plans? You know, who are we trying to connect to outside of you already have your membership, right? But attracting more and really educating the public, like creating that outreach is really what I'm getting at within the industry, outside the industry. And so I guess the question is really focused on what are those plans or who are you, reaching out to? And then it kind of bleeds into strategic plans. What is the strategy? What are the goals for both of the organizations leading into next year? It's hard to believe that 2023 is almost over. I don't understand.
It's
The
been
year
flying.
it's been flying. And so we just have a few months left. But yeah, so it's about I want to hear your thoughts on outreach from the ISA and goals and plans for next year.
Definitely. So outreach is one of our goals, increasing our outreach and our ability to provide the information created by ISA and our partners like UAA to a broader audience. Not only, and you mentioned in the industry, that's one piece of it, and our members and credential holders, which are, growing audiences as well. But to hit the folks that are impacted by the work that our members and credential holders do, in a good way, and that they need to understand why and how important it is. And what the arborists are doing and how that potentially impacts the benefits that they're receiving from those trees themselves, whether they're trees in their backyards or trees in public spaces that they recreate in and enjoy. And Dennis is right, it's the societal piece. And so from my perspective, it's the next group or the broader group that we want to influence are those community members, whether that's small communities who have a small geographical area, or whether it's these broader global communities of interest spheres, if you want to call it that, where they may be interested in food, agroforestry, or they might be more interested in greening cities, or they might be interested in sustainability of our ever increasing urban areas, and how to then get the information into those networks so that they can then become that next kind of ring in this, outreach that we're doing, which is a very separate audience than the general public, where we use things like our treesaregood.org website,
Right.
which keeps growing. We had over 1.6 million hits just this last year.
Oh my God.
And so we continue to see that increase in impact, but we want to make sure that has its place in those consumer brochures and free downloads and information on kind of how you need to mulch or how to prune young trees is there and available. But then how do you get information to, let's say, the sustainability directors at cities about trees and how important ensuring that that's a part of their conversation as they're looking at what their community is doing for the future? That's definitely where we're looking for the next year plus, relative to our strategic goal on that outreach piece. But goals in general for our organization moving into 2024, not a lot of people know about this, but ISA has been undertaking a business ecosystem project over the last year and a half, in essence. And we are fully planning on 2024 being the year of some implementation for the improvements and the new systems that we're going to be putting in place that are going to directly impact our members and credential holders and their experience with how they get information and support from our organization. And so, you know, typically this kind of a discussion is a little bit internal and you don't really broadcast it out. But from a goal standpoint, ensuring that our programs have the software and the tools that are available for people to use to then not only self-manage, but then also get the information they need to provide it to their customers or to their employers is a really important part of what ISA does as a credentialing body for the professionals. And so we've got some exciting things coming there, significant financial investment on our organization side, but we're really excited about the improvements that that's going to make to everybody's experience, including our own team members who are helping to maintain and ensure the customer service for our customers, in essence.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. There's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot of improvements that there's always improvements that can be made to any program, but coming at it from different angles is really, really what you're saying. And that's really interesting for sure. Dennis, what about
I know that my team and myself are looking forward to this upgrade that she's talking about. And some of the things that I've been a certified arborist since the mid-1990s myself, and a utility specialist shortly after that when that test came around as an opportunity and certification piece. So I've got firsthand both as a user and now from an industry partner perspective in there, and the importance of that outreach and those upgrades.
Dennis is true. He has the experience from the credential holder side, but he's also helping inform on behalf of UAA what some of the improvements that ISA is going to be making on our database and our systems, because we do work so closely with UAA on the delivery of some of our membership as well as credentials, that having the UAA's perspective and even requests for things that would make their jobs easier relative to how our organizations work together was an important part of the investment that we made in this business ecosystem process. So, you know, they've been there with us the whole time, and we really appreciate that partnership.
Yeah, and we appreciate being a part of that. I think that's one of the things, Nadia, that emphasized too, that this working relationship on both sides, we do have direct access behind the scenes, and we're getting not only from the UAA to ISA, but ISA to UAA, and we're working together on how does that benefit our membership and how does that grow the whole. I mentioned before, you know, we're predicated on advancing the professionalism of the entire industry. And it's important that we work together on these things and get those. So we do have access on that backside, and we do work together quite a bit. Caitlyn mentioned it, you know, we work offline. It's quite a bit, which is nice because then we know how to get a hold of folks. We can work through things firsthand. And there's probably not a lot of visibility on that point. And that may be part of what perpetuates some of the thoughts in the past that we don't work together at all. And that's just not true. We are working together on a lot of different fronts, trying to advance everybody's position.
It's even clear to me, and I'm an outsider. I'm not even an arborist. Just as an outsider, I see that you have a great working relationship too, and it's really great to be a part of this. And I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation today and just share some thoughts and insights about, you know, industry, what's happening in this industry, goals for next year. But we're almost out of time, so there's still so much to talk about, right? I wanted to get into like urban forestry and ask specific in the weeds details, because I'm nerdy like that. I like to get into the weeds with the details, but we don't have as much time. But I do have one more question, and this is a personal question. This is about your opinion. What was your highlight, your favorite moment, the biggest highlight for you in reflecting on 2023? I know we do still have a month left of this year, so I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but still, I mean, we are nearing the end. Caitlyn, what about you? What are your thoughts on looking back on this year so far? What was just the biggest highlight for you personally, as CEO at ISA?
So thinking about this last year, kind of a theme for me and for, I think, us here at ISA on our internal staff team has really been collaboration and outreach. And so the thing that I've been most excited about, or that I'm looking back on and reflecting about how amazing it was, is how visible ISA was with our partners, and how we kind of truly were helping to facilitate connections and conversations around topics that are important to ISA and important to the groups that we work with. You know, we had our second in-person conference back from the pause of COVID. Here in the US, it was our first one coming back, and we were really excited about that. And it was so amazing to see all of our ISA team members and our volunteers, and you know, all that leadership happening. We had followed that with the World Forum, where several of our ISA leadership team here and staff members were out in front presenting the key work that our organization is doing in urban forestry and arboriculture, you know, working and showing up with Dennis at the Partners Conference and at the Utility Arborist Association Conference and at Trees and Utilities. You know, there's so many of those examples of the network that is created and how ISA does play a role in that. And so for me, it's about that piece of it, is that we truly stepped into our role in this collaborative group that are working on these key issues in arboriculture and urban forestry and vegetation management, and are helping to move the work that we're all doing forward.
I love it. I love it. That's a great answer. I love that, Caitlyn.
That was a good question. I had to think about it for a minute.
Because I like to hear your insight. You know, I think that's a big deal to hear from your perspective. You know, what is that highlight? So Dennis, same question for you. What, from your perspective, you know, what was something this year that really stood out to you as just a major highlight, and you're looking back like, I'm so glad that happened, or whatever it was? I'd love to hear this.
Yeah, so the outreach piece is also one that resonates really well for me. I think that the getting out in front of people and being out, and Caitlyn mentioned, you know, the opportunities to hit a few of these conferences. We were down at ISA, had a booth down there in Albuquerque. We're able to represent there at Trees and Utilities in Pittsburgh with the Arbor Day Foundation, the groups out there and the outreach. It's that outreach for the work. We've got over 200 volunteers that are industry thought leaders working on things that transcend competitive bounds within our industry, and the areas of safety that we're seeing people step up forward in, and where we're headed with the safety culture, moving from a safety one mindset to a safety two mindset, which is a whole topic of podcast time of an hour worth of explanation on the backside. We're really proud of the advancement, because the group's on the vanguard. We're on the front edge of that, on the bleeding edge of that transition, and that's going to be good for the entire industry, the arboriculture, anybody in the tree space. The advancements of safety, just being present, and you know, making a lot of concerted effort at being at the table and having an opportunity for folks to be at the tables where decisions are made, and really bring it down to that local level and that community level, so that people are making the collaboration, was another word Caitlyn used that I think echoes real well here, is that local collaboration. A lot of these decisions that our organizations are working on are very high level, you know, they're backed out quite a bit of ways. They also need to be applied at a local level. They need to be applied at a community level, and those communities need to have access to each other and need to know who's there. So bringing that awareness that, you know, you've got utility arborists working in every community that it basically is using energy, and you've got arborists that are working in these communities, and those folks can help you make decisions. They have an expertise and they have a thought process. They have training that can help educate and inform local decisions that can be made that impact the locals at the level where they're going to live with those things. And that's where it should be. How do we get that information from the high level out to where it's most applicable? The old analogy of the rubber meeting the road. How can we get it to where it needs to be? And that's what I'm really proud about, is we've made significant investments and significant forward progress in getting our messaging out, getting out in front of people. We've got some new TV commercials we put together to talk about the cool jobs in this space and some of this stuff. So it's been fun. It's this outreach piece and being out and talking with folks and trying to understand what their needs are has been the best part of the year for me.
I love that. There's so much to talk about. I mean, we didn't even talk about outreach for students. I mean, that's a whole topic we could talk about for hours. Um, I want to, if there's one thing, if there's one really important thing, is talking right now directly to your members. Um, over the years, I mean, at least from what I've gleaned as an outsider, is there is so much effort put into engagement with committees. And so as a member, if you're a member of both organizations or one or the other, I think there's so much to be said for getting engaged and participating on a committee. You learn so much from your fellow members. I learned so much from my fellow editors. And so being a part of organizations like this it's so key and vital to growing individually in your career. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts you'd like to add on what I just said. There's
I think
again,
you're right. You're 100% right. And I think
I agree. And I'd add to that too,
yeah,
if
go
you're
ahead.
an employer thinking about your employees' time, this is a great professional development opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Your employee sees what they see based on where they are and where they're working. And here's an opportunity for both of our organizations. And I know both of our organizations are always actively seeking volunteers to come in and help. Here's an opportunity to gain perspective beyond your geographic footprint, beyond maybe your work perspective, and see it from other people's areas and other people's eyes, and see how they're doing it and what their challenges are. And I think you'll find that in both organizations, arborists as a whole, it is a familial type of relationship. There's a camaraderie inside this industry that's
Yeah.
I find different than other industries,
Oh,
where
yeah.
once people find out you're a tree person or a tree nerd,
Yep.
it's like, hang on, the conversation's about to go a whole other direction. And I think folks ought to leverage that for both professional and personal development.
Yeah, absolutely.
it helps there's individual benefits that people realize by volunteering at any kind of an association or membership group, or on a board, or writing articles. There's so many different ways you can volunteer. But from an organizational perspective, it's one of the key ways that we're even able to do the work that we do. We rely so heavily on people's engagement and their volunteer time. And so it is one of the things that makes ISA run. And
Yes.
we're always looking to broaden that network of people who want to engage with us that way, to benefit them and to benefit us and all of our other members and credential holders, because the work that they do directly influences that.
Yeah, it's truly win-win. So members listening, get involved in your committees, get on a committee, do something, but definitely the more you talk and have those conversations with tree people. I mean, I would love to be like a fly on the wall, hearing two people just like connecting and talking and all the nerdy things that they talk about. It's that to me is it's informational and it's educational, and it doesn't have education. You can educate yourself in different ways now. It's not the classroom setting, it's in conversations. I mean, that's how you learn. That's how I learned to grow my business, was through networking. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for getting involved in your organizations and dive deeper, lean into your industry. So thank you both. This was an excellent conversation. I think a lot of listeners are going to gain some great insight from both of you. I think they're going to feel connected to you as leaders and maybe come to you with questions and ideas. And I can tell that both of you are both very open to hearing ideas. I can tell just from this conversation that you're really like to engage with your members. So thank you again.
Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.